Thanks for joining us. This is our extended interview with Melanie Leonard, founder of Streamline Legal. The first part of this video is from our GNGF Live, which happens every other Wednesday over on our Facebook page. The second part here, in this bonus extended interview, we dive into a lot more about increasing the productivity of your law firm, and we discuss her experience and thoughts about productivity of in-person versus remote teams. If you already saw the live, I'll put the timestamp to the exclusive extended interview below. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can follow along with all of our great conversations on legal marketing and the business side of running your law firm. Welcome to GNGF Live, your bi-weekly Ask the Experts about all things law firm marketing and business growth. I'm Mark Homer, author of Online Law Practice Strategies and founder of Get Noticed, Get Found. On this show, we focus on the business side of growing and running your law firm. So I'm really excited to have today's guest, Melanie Leonard, founder of Streamline Legal and co-host of the popular podcast, Your Law Firm is a Business, Take It to the Next Level. Of course, I have to say popular because she is the much better co-host with yours truly on that podcast. As always, be sure to like and subscribe to our page, not just the video, so you can get updated when our next episode goes live. And of course, it never hurts for you to show just a little love and hit that like button on the video. It really does help us with the algorithms. We've got moderators in the chat, so please ask any questions and interact during this premiere. And if you're watching it in the future after the premiere, we do monitor comments and we will reach out to guests and answer any follow-up questions that you have. That's because we love you all and we love getting to meet you online, and I'm excited to say maybe in person again soon. You can find a list of our upcoming webinars, CLEs, and all of our other events where we're going to be speaking on our website at gnGF.com/events. We also have an extensive library of videos, including extended interviews, our in-depth GNGF tips series, as well as full workshop replays on topics like building a better legal lead funnel and so much more over on our YouTube channel. You can watch those videos. In fact, you can even grab a free legal lead funnel workbook, but do that after the interview, of course, and we'll throw that link in the chat. All right, let's get to the interview. Melanie Leonard, thanks for joining me today.
I'm thrilled to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And, this is old hat for us because we get to chat like every week
with
our podcast. So
I love it.
So this is fun because, we talk all the time about other things, but I get to actually interview you now. So this is great. So one thing I have to ask, and I'll, a little tongue in cheek, but look, there's a lot of coaches and consultants out there in legal talking about, ways people need to improve their business. But you went and started a company doing that. So why did you start Streamline Legal?
I did. And I'll tell you, as a former practicing attorney, I worked with a lot of great coaches and a lot of great consultants. So there are, as you mentioned, a ton of them out there. And so when I went into this, it was really with the idea that I wasn't finding what I thought I needed at the time. And so I really thought that there were some great coaches that would help you figure out how to run your business. There were some great, consultants that would help you figure out how to use software. But I didn't feel like there was anyone that was really mixing the two together and really helping me determine, even though I can use the software this way, should I be using the software this way, or how should I be using it? And how does that integrate with my bigger business goals? And so it Streamlined, the whole reason that I started Streamlined was to really marry those two ideas, not just the business coaching, but also the technical aspect of it. And how can we actually get application out of this idea? So we're all about the application. We want to see the ideas actually put into practice in these law firms. And so that's been a really great thing for us to be able to take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, that's one area that I love when we get to talk is you're not just talking about the technology or the bell and whistle or, yet another thing it does. It's more, people and processes are like almost first for you, and then like how does the tool support that? So it's a big differentiator. It should be.
Yeah, it is. And again, there's some great technical people out there. There's some great coaches, but it's just how do we put the two together? And that's where I see firms really struggling, and we're excited to work with them. Awesome.
So I'm going to ask about a little bit of technology. Sorry.
Sure.
I just said
I love technology.
We don't just focus on that. And maybe it applies here because this and your point about not focusing just on the bells and whistles, but look, I mean, we know that law firm owners out there end up having to there's not just like one package that fits all law firms, right? Like and I actually feel like sometimes it's 4 or 5, 6 that they're kind of like bundling together a little bit. Why is that?
Yeah, it's true. And, I like to think of it as the one ring that rules them all concept. Like there just isn't one, right? Like it just doesn't exist. And I think there's some really great software out there and some that does, a ton of stuff, but there just isn't anything that's all encompassing. And here's the thing. I don't think that's so bad necessarily, because a lot of these products, they will really focus in on one thing and do it really, really well. So for example, if I want to have a technology to text with my clients, that's a really great feature. But if I get it just thrown in with some other software, it's not always as robust as I might like, So maybe I would prefer to use the product that focuses just on texting. And that's just one example. But a lot of times we really do benefit from using multiple different softwares because of that specialty. The trick then, of course, is making them all work together so we don't feel like we're doing, double or triple the work. And that's really where it gets tricky, right? That's really the challenge that I see a lot of firms dealing with today is how many products do I actually need and how am I going to make them work together? And so, we like to focus first on, what are your needs? Like, what are you actually trying to accomplish here? Do you need to text your clients or want to text your clients, or where do these things fall in priority? And then once we've got your priorities straight, then we can figure out how much software do you actually need and how are we going to use it? So yeah, I think that on the one hand, it can be a really great benefit to not have everything bundled together because you do get that extra level of quality in a lot of cases. But on the other hand, now we have to figure out how to all work it together. So it can be a challenge. I agree.
So there's a continuum there, though. It sounds like it's not just pick the best product for everything, but depending on how important that process or step in your process is, you may opt for something that's more integrated, seems a little more like seamless together, even though maybe it's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect. That's good enough. It's better to kind of get the integrated feel versus, this is so core to your business. Like maybe you're doing a lot of heavy documents, right?
Right.
Doc automation, getting the best one versus the integrated one might make sense there.
Correct.
But calendaring,
Exactly.
Calendly's better, but use the integrated one because it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's a balance, right? I mean, depending on what your priorities are and what your needs are and what you want to focus on. I mean, we could be focusing on what's working best for us, and then the integration might be more important, the integrated product, or we might be focusing on, how do we best want to serve our clients? If our clients are always texting or our clients are always doing this, that, or the other, then we might make that decision. So there are a lot of factors that we need to look at. That's for sure.
Yeah, we just did an episode with John Strohmeyer. So like when you talk about what's right for the client, what's the outcome you're going for, and then working through that client service piece,
Exactly.
Like that's in there too, right? So
Exactly.
So let's talk about a law firm that's kind of maybe new to getting processes going, right? So and maybe to be honest, like they don't have any process, don't even think they need any processes. Where do you start with somebody like that?
Yeah. Well, first, I think it starts with education, right? I mean, there are lots of firms that are running out there today, somewhat successfully without any processes, frankly. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be done. I do, though, think that the processes are going to help you scale if, in fact, that's your goal, right, to grow. They're also going to make your life easier. As a former law firm owner, I've seen how processes really quite literally changed my life as far as how I was practicing law and how I was running my business. And so I really do believe that every firm can benefit from more processes. So that's where I would start, is just educating them on the idea that a process really is going to be helpful for you and, frankly, help you serve your clients better. If you're stuck like recreating the wheel every time you have to file a complaint, then you're probably not going to get your complaints filed very quickly, and your clients are going to get frustrated, and it's going to be a whole vicious cycle. And so not only does it help us internally, but it also can help us serve our clients better. And that's where I think we need to start looking at, how am I actually hurting my own practice or hurting my clients by not having these processes in place? And then once they've come to that determination, then it's a question of, how do I actually start a process? And the good news is that most firms already have processes in place just by default, right? Like, because it's natural to not want to have to repeat the same things over and over, right? So usually it's a legal assistant or a paralegal or somebody who says, you know what? I don't want to draft that complaint from scratch every time because that's going to take way too long. And so I'm going to use this template or whatever. And they'll start by default coming up with these systems. They may or may not be documented anywhere, but being able to document those systems is really going to help you be able to analyze how can we improve upon this, right? Just because we've been doing it this way for 10 years doesn't mean it's the best way necessarily. And so once you can actually document what's going on, then you can take a look and say, okay, where can we tweak this a little bit to make it even better? So that's really what I recommend is first take a look at how you're doing things now and see if you can make improvements on it. And it may just be a slight little tweak, but those little tweaks can make a big difference in the long run.
Yeah, lots of 1% things can really add up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I like that point of, you can't really improve the process until you've kind of like figured out what process is really happening.
Yeah.
And I think, you mentioned like the paralegal or somebody, an assistant, maybe actually creating some of this stuff and the lawyer is not even aware. Like they're just kind of doing what they're doing and assuming a lot of stuff's happening. And maybe they think it's happening a certain way, but nobody stopped to document it or whatever. And so it could be going a totally different direction.
And I think those conversations are so helpful and so critical. I've walked into firms where they've never had such a conversation, and the attorney assumes that something's happening one way, and the staff is doing it some other way, and maybe maybe the staff is doing it more efficiently than the attorney thought, or vice versa. Doesn't really matter. Just the idea that we would have this conversation, because as in most cases, 3 brains is better than 1 or whatever, and people are going to start making suggestions and, well, hey, I do it this way. Why don't you do it this way? And well, have you thought about doing it this way? And so really, I love those conversations. I think that they're so helpful to be able to just put everybody in the best position to be able to get their jobs done. And not to mention, if you are the owner or you are the managing attorney in the firm, those are very enlightening conversations to have. Now you know why it takes so long for someone to do something, right? And you can plan accordingly or get them the resources they need to, do it faster or whatever the plan is. But without that conversation, we're basically like with blinders on and everyone's doing their own thing. And sometimes that works, right. But usually it can be done better if we're collaborating to some extent.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads to my next question, right? So I think that, because you said like it can work, right? It just may not be better. So there's a lot of people I know who are very much, well, we get all the work done. Why do I need to, really focus on that? Why is it so hard to like document the process?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, that's pretty common is, if you've been doing something the same way for, 5, 10, 15 years, it's almost on autopilot. Like you don't even really think about it anymore. You just do it. Right. And it's right. When we get to that point that it makes it really a challenge for us to stop and think and document it, right? Whether we're writing it down or recording it or however we're going to document it. But it just doesn't come very naturally because it's so ingrained and we're so used to doing it. The challenge that presents though is if we keep it ingrained with one person or we keep it in one person's brain, now it becomes a huge challenge to delegate things, to monitor things. If we can't talk to that person, they're sick or they're out to lunch or whatever, we have no idea what's going on. And so as an owner or as a manager, it's really vital to get that information out of one person's head, place it, in a practice management software, in a paper file, like wherever you keep the information. Let's get that information out of people's heads so that we can share it, so that we can share in the responsibility, share in the successes, share in all of it. But that's a really hard thing to do when it's stuck in someone's head, that's for sure.
Yeah, and if it's stuck in one person's head, that's a liability, right?
Absolutely.
If that person leaves, especially, think about the environment we're in right now where people are leaving just because they can't be remote or because they don't want to be remote or
right.
Because there's a lot of money being thrown around, right now. People are changing locations. So if you have all that in one person's head, like your process walks out the door.
Absolutely. It's a huge liability. Not to mention if your goal is some type of growth, if we want to now add a second person to duplicate some of that work or some of that job, now it's going to take us a lot longer to pull that out and teach this new person and have them supervised and all that. Whereas if we have it documented already, now they can just go straight to that documentation and start learning. Of course, we may want to supplement it with some on-the-job training or whatever, but at least they have a resource to start from and something to refer back to. And that's what prevents people from knocking on your door every 10 minutes. Mark, did you say this? Oh, Mark, how do I do this? Mark, when do I do this? Like, no one's going to get anything done at that kind of situation. So, to be able to have that stuff documented is going to save the other people that would have been training more a ton of time and be more productive. So plus you can use it over and over and over and over again. So there's a lot of benefit to documenting, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make money billing hundreds of dollars an hour when you can't bill the hundreds of dollars because somebody's asking you how to send an invoice for the third time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I think the point there, right? Not just so we had liability and all these things, but getting that stuff out of that person's head also goes back to what you said earlier. You now can actually improve the process, or look for those one or two things, or look for the things that are being done in a totally different way than you thought it was being done, right? Just because it's been in somebody's head. And
it also is a great opportunity to now start looking at, okay, where can we automate things? Right? Like, where are there parts in our process that don't have to be a person or don't have to be a trained person? Like maybe we have, this is what I love to do, an exercise where you write down everything you do in the day. And then as an attorney, you look through it and you say, okay, what required a law license, right? And you check off the 5 things or whatever it was. Then you look at the rest of them and you say, okay, could a well-trained paralegal do some of this stuff, right? And you check off the 4 things there. And then you say, okay, well, could a well-trained, legal assistant do some of these things? And you check off those things. Well, pretty soon you get this list done and you're like, okay, so really I only had to do about 30% of that stuff, right? So now I recognize where I'm actually losing money by doing these other things, right? Instead of delegating them to someone else on my team. So it's a really great exercise that really brings to the forefront the idea that, this may not be the best way of doing things, frankly.
Right. And I think that you should continue that exercise, right? So like do it for the lawyer owner kind of, person, because that's probably because they're the owner, they have all these little extra things that they're doing because they started it, right?
Right.
And then, but then go down to the associates. What are things we can take off their plate? Like
Absolutely.
The paralegal, what are they doing that an admin can do for half the price? So, and like automation and systems, what tools can be out there? So
exactly. So
we do something where we've taken, on a whiteboard, we Post-it notes of all those kind of tasks, and we kind of put the person in the middle and say, what can only this person do?
Right.
And then what can maybe somebody else do, but this person probably should do, and then we work our way out, and then we just start with the Post-it notes are further out, from the orbit.
Yeah, I love that.
I got that from it was a Michael McCallowitz book or something. I can't remember the name of it. Maybe Clockwork, I think. I'll throw in the notes if we remember the name. But I think that's where I got that idea, and it's really helped. We've kind of went through our account managers, got stuff off their plate that the project managers should have been doing. Right now, we're doing the same thing with the project managers, and so it was a huge amount of items that were like, wait, you're doing that? Like that was like some of my thoughts. Like, right. Oh my gosh, that's a total thing that like a waste of your time.
Yeah, I once met with this firm in Atlanta, and they, we were having one of those kind of conversations, which they hadn't had very often before. And we were just talking about, how does this person do that, and how does that person do that? And it came out that, their receptionist was spending hours a day filing documents and scanning documents and filing documents and in paper files. And it turned out that no one was ever looking at the paper files, ever. Nobody ever looked there. They were all looking online. And so then it came to a point where, why are we paying this person this many hours a day, literally, to file this paper that no one's ever looking at, right? And so, but here's the thing. If, we don't always reanalyze those things, right? So maybe at one point it was really important to have the paper file in there, right? Yeah. But now, that's why it's great to do this exercise, once a quarter or once every 6 months or something, so that we catch those things. Because otherwise, we get into habits and we just keep doing things the way we're doing them. But if we can do that exercise with some regularity, now we start looking at, okay, well, this used to be important, but you know what? It's not so important anymore. So those are great things to catch through that exercise.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add, because I talked about it with somebody on another episode, was also your clients. Like there are things you probably are doing for clients that maybe made sense 6 years ago
Sure.
that don't make any sense now. Like I know we used to send mailed monthly reports. And then, finally, like we asked our clients, like, how that took time.
Yeah.
If somebody to build all the reports, then took money to print them off and then, send them. And that's more time on top of that. And found out, most of our clients were saying, no, they're just sitting on my desk stacking up. Just, get on the phone with me once a month and tell me what's important, and it was like, oh, okay. And, there could be examples of like, invoices being mailed in an envelope when somebody's like, no, just email me. I don't ever, like my mail goes to another spot.
Right. Right. No, that's a perfect example. And again, just an example of if we don't stop to look at those things, they just keep going, right? And it just keeps happening.
So here's one for you, because I'm sure you get this a lot. What do you say to attorneys or law firm owners and stuff who look at their practice area and kind of go, well, look, I mean, it's a little more experienced, creative, whatever. Like I need to be thinking, and I can't really be proactive and think about a process for this practice area.
Yeah, I get that argument a lot, especially with litigation, right? Well, I don't know what the judge is going to rule, and I don't know how this is going to play out, right? And I do agree that litigation is a lot more dependent on other factors than, let's say, estate planning, right? Estate planning, you make a plan, you prepare the documents, they sign them, you're pretty much done, right? It always goes that way, right? There's rarely a time when estate planning doesn't follow that path. But with litigation, I mean, you might have a motion to dismiss, you might have more discovery, you might have more discovery, you might have, there's all kinds of things that you can't necessarily know are going to happen. But here's the thing. You may not know that a motion to dismiss is coming, but as an experienced litigator, or frankly, even as an inexperienced litigator, there's a possibility of a motion to dismiss. And you also know that every time there is a motion to dismiss, these are the 10 steps we take to respond to it, right? And so while you may not be able to systematize the actual arguments you're going to make in the motion, you can systematize the time you're going to spend researching the motion, the time you're going to spend, drafting the motion, the time or responding to the motion, the time you're going to spend, at a hearing for the motion, preparing your client for the hearing, that kind of stuff. So it's that procedure. And guess what? All litigation has procedure. I mean, they have a whole class on it in law school, civil procedure, if you didn't take it. And so, that's the kind of stuff that we can predict and that we can systematize. And so oftentimes, while litigation, I'm not going to have, one straight workflow. I might have 15 workflows, one for when we file the complaint, one for if they bring a motion, one for discovery, one for, there's parts of litigation that are always going to be there. So those are the things that we break down and we systematize those things, not so much the legal argument, because you're right, there may be different legal arguments with every different client, but we can still systematize how we're going to respond to that and make our own plan. Even in litigation, you're not just going to walk in and, it's not quite the wild, wild west. It's a lot more planned, right? Like I have a plan of how I want this to go. It may have to be changed. It may not work out that way, but I'm going to make the plan first and adjust it as opposed to going in without a plan. So I do believe even with litigation, pretty much every practice area, there are opportunities to systematize that and be able to get the benefit of that. Because here's the thing, again, the systematizing is not just benefiting your firm, it's also benefiting your client, right? You're going to get the work product out that much faster. You're going to be able to anticipate their questions, their needs much faster. And so that's really going to help on both sides.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk before about, like even in the most creative places, people have systems and processes and stuff. So
Exactly. My favorite example is of the author, right? The professional author, and people are just amazed that they can write a whole book. And when do they when do they do that? How do they do that? And you always hear these interviews with authors, and they say, well, every day I have a schedule. I write this many hours a day or this many words a day. And, they don't all make it into the book, but it's my process, right? I mean, they use those words. That's my process. I go and I write. So it's a similar kind of thing, right? We're making room for that creativity, that argument, that research, that stuff to happen in order to be the great attorney that you are.
Awesome. I love that. So we are out of time on our Facebook Live portion, but I had more questions I wanted to talk about I know you've done a lot of working with different firms on this productivity of like in-person versus kind of remote teams or some of the hybrid, and that's kind of a really hot topic now.
It is.
So I wanted to get your experience around that and some other questions. So if you could stick around, we'll just record more, and of course we probably should put it on our podcast. I think that would be great.
Let's do it.
We'll push it to YouTube, the extended part, and we'll be able to people can catch it there.
That sounds great.
Awesome. And before we wrap up though, Melanie, where can people find you?
Yes, we are very, very accessible via social media. We can find us on Facebook, Instagram, your favorite social media platform. But as well, you can also find us online at www.streamline.legal. And we'd love to chat with any firm that feels like they're struggling with these kind of things.
And of course, they should check out an amazing podcast.
It is. I'm so glad to be doing this podcast. It is fantastic.
Yep, and we'll throw that all those information in the show notes.
Sounds good.
Stick with me one moment, and I'll be right back, Melanie. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe to our Facebook page so you get notified when our next episode goes live. We have new interviews about law firm marketing and the business side of running your firm here every other Wednesday. We're going to keep going here in the GNGF studios, and you can watch the full extended interview with Melanie Leonard this Friday over on our YouTube channel. We'll be diving into more about increasing the productivity in your law firm, and of course, we're going to discuss her experience and thoughts about productivity of in-person versus remote teams. We'll see you then. Thanks for sticking with me, Melanie.
Happy to, Mark.
Awesome. You get so much time to talk to me throughout the week on the podcast, and now I'm making you stick around longer today.
But here's the thing. I love talking about this stuff, so it really works out well.
There we go. So I need to ask, because you've not only in your experience as you have like a remote team, right? But you've worked with so many different law firms that and had to go remote and are starting to figure this stuff out with remote and in office and stuff. What's been your experience on kind of like productivity differences of people like in office versus remote? And then after you answer that, I'll probably lop on, what do you see things going with this hybrid?
Well, I am an attorney, so I'm going to say it depends. But here's what it depends on, right? In my experience, I've had some really, really great high productivity teams that have been remote. And I really believe, though, that it's based more on how you set up your office than necessarily even the people within it, frankly. Because if I have people that have tools that make it feel like, we're sitting across the desk from each other, then, you still get the same interaction. You still get, or maybe even better interaction, frankly. But if you give them the right tools and you set up your business in a way that they actually can be more productive by being remote than they would be in the office, that's when you get a winning combination, right? And I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, there are some challenges, right? But I truly believe that if you give people the right tools, there are people that will just excel far more working remotely than they ever would have in an office. There's distractions in an office. So I think that there's benefits to both. But I really do believe that you can set up your office to be very, very highly productive in a remote setting. And yeah, it's worked well for us. And I've also, run my law firm that way as well. So that can be very, very helpful. And even if you're not thinking, I want to be a remote team, I still would prefer to set up my office that way, because then when you have something like a pandemic that comes along and you have to figure out how to operate remotely, it's not a big deal, right? Like you don't have to be remote. You can set up tools that allow you to be remote, but then you have the option, right? And so I think really that's the winning combination, right? Set up your office so that you have the remote capabilities, whether you use them on a daily basis or you use them on a monthly basis or a yearly basis. It still makes life that much easier if you ever have to transition for any reason.
Yeah, it's interesting you said like the tools and the like that the way you've set up your office maybe is more important than the type of team member in terms of their ability on remote versus it's the fact that you have the ability to do it and have the tools and the systems. And it's interesting because I think that I've always thought, we have a great culture. That's why we're able to go remote so fast. But I never really stepped back to go, well, wait a second. We also had put in rules around, okay, you have to use Slack, you can't send internal emails, so there's a history and visibility for everybody, right? There's channels by clients, you can, subscribe to things that are important to you, and if you don't work on that client, you don't have to listen to it, right? There's documents were all in the box for us, and so we had our systems of record, everything was mostly cloud-based. And there was no paper, really being passed around the office. So
exactly.
When people left, and for the pandemic, and we also had the ability, like, hey, you can work remote, if you need to be at home, or maybe you have those times when the contractor has to come and drop something off, or you have to be there for 3 or 4 hours when the washing machine's being installed or whatever, right? Like these things, life happens, and you don't need to really be doing anything. But like if you're home and you don't have access to anything, you just lost 4 hours.
Exactly.
But really, you lost 3, or you can gain back 3 of it, just by having that access. And so we made that flexible. And so I wonder, it really has me thinking. It's like, I think we still have a great culture. I'm gonna stick with that.
Sure.
But I think that these tools really enabled more than I realized.
Yeah, culture is very important as well. I don't mean to downplay that. And one of the things I think that kind of brings the culture and the tools together is communication tools, right? Like, storage of documents and storage of information is also very important. But when we're talking about how does our team interact, right? I have team members in Colombia, I have team members in Mexico, and it is just as easy for me to call them up and interact with them on a video conference or whatever I need to do as it is to the person in the office next to me, So if you have the right tools that allow you to very easily keep up that communication, then that communication will flow. Whereas on the other hand, if I'm in a place where, I can't access the internet, but, at a very slow speed, or I can't get, it's very unreliable, then my tools are not going to work, and it's going to defeat the purpose. And so I think that one of the most important tools to look at is communications, right? And whether it's video communication or text communication or a combination of all these things, if we have those tools to enable that communication, that's going to make it so much easier for everyone.
Yeah, and I think the thoughtful implementation of the process and the rollout of those tools to kind of say, this is the tool for this, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is the tool, this is the system of record, for this piece of information. And if it ends up somewhere else, like it's okay if people ignore it because it should have been here, right? And whether that's if you want to have a meeting and it normally would have been face to face, it needs to be on a Zoom call, right? No, you don't just throw a bunch of Slack messages back and forth and have a really bad meeting, right, over Slack.
Well, and teach them how to use the tools, right? Like, don't just assume that, we have Zoom, everybody knows Zoom, they'll be fine on Zoom. Well, yeah, but you know what? There's things that Zoom does that are gonna make them even more productive, right? And so, like, actually learn and teach your team these tools so that they can get the most out of them and they can take advantage of it and be able to, communicate even in some cases, frankly, better than they would have in the office. So I really do think that the tools, and especially the communication tools, are key.
Yeah, and I know, like, you've done work with, like, building onboarding, work for people so that they know the process for all these tools, right? Like somebody new comes in, should be the same as when we roll it out to everybody, right? Like that's the same kind of training.
Exactly. That, and documenting that training is so important. Whenever we work with clients, we record every one of our sessions. And so what ends up happening is at the end, they've got this library full of the resources that they can use with new team members, right? And so that's a huge benefit, I think, to these firms when they're trying to grow and bring on new people, or even if you're not trying to grow, but, attrition happens and you have to replace people at some point. Now you have this great resource to be able to do that.
Yeah, and then in terms of kind of asking you to predict a little bit of the future, but like, where do you, like, a lot of people did go remote, and a lot of people are having the ideas of, can I be a virtual law office and all these but not everybody is going to go be a virtual office. Like, they still have an office. They want to be, some people want to be back in the office, but some people don't, right? So, like, where do you see some of this hybrid going, or have you started hearing, your clients talk about, how they enable that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say that most of my clients, they have really picked one. Like, we are a in the office team, or we are a remote team. When I see the mixture, it's usually just like that one person that's remote because she just had a baby or she just moved out of state or, something like that. So there are exceptions being made more regularly, but I don't see a ton of, half of us are remote and half are in the office. So I feel like it's really, we were talking about culture a little while ago. It really is a culture kind of thing. What kind of firm do you want to build? And I think there are teams out there that just feel more productive or feel more comfortable being in person. So that's what a majority of them will do, or vice versa. They would prefer to be, remote, and that's what most of them do. So I feel like it's more of a cultural, we've picked this one as opposed to we're going to do some of this and some of that. I don't see that a lot. I see, really, and I won't say line in the sand being drawn, but like definite, this is what kind of firm we are versus this is what kind of firm we are.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
And if you're going, if you're our, let's call it line in the sand for whatever, but if it's, you're going to say we're this or this culturally, just I think everybody should be aware. And I my take on this is that some people will leave because they want to be in an office and you decide to be remote, or they want to be remote and you decide to be in an office like that. Like there's going to be some changes, I think, with as people are going back to work and trying to make these calls.
Yeah, it's interesting. And one of the things I've seen as well is there have been culture changes, right? Like this firm that used to be all, we're in the office 9 to 5 every day, kind of thing. Now they're coming out of it and being like, well, wait a minute, maybe that culture wasn't the best fit. Maybe we need to rethink our values. Maybe we need to rethink our goals here. And that's been fascinating to me because, like I said, I do think that it revolves around the culture. And then when your culture changes, then you have to look at some of your processes and some of the way you do business and figure out, does that still fit with our new culture? And it's fascinating to me because I feel like, well, number one, I was a sociology major, so just studying people in groups is fascinating to begin with. But number two is the idea that, culture doesn't usually change that much, right? Like usually culture, if it changes, is over a long period of time. But when you have something like a pandemic that comes in and just changes the way everything is done, virtually overnight, then that's when you start to see these culture shifts, and that's when you start to see things changing. And that, I think, is fascinating. So I think it does go hand in hand with the culture of the firm.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned earlier, like documenting your process so you can improve it, documenting your culture, and like these things. It's not just even if you don't know your culture is changing, it may be changing. So it may be worth spending that time with the team, or however you like to think about your vision and values and stuff as a law firm owner. I think it might be really worth taking that time.
I think so. I think that. While culture may change more slowly than processes maybe, it's still something that it's a good idea to keep an eye on. And even if it doesn't change, to reinforce those things with your team, right? Maybe you have newer team members, or maybe, you haven't spent much time recently talking about it. So if you are bringing these kind of cultural things up with some regularity, it's going to become better ingrained within your team. And I think that's going to be a great benefit to you.
Awesome. Okay, so my last question, and it's not process oriented, but just because we get to talk about both systems and processes and people and tools, and also marketing. So, what is your favorite kind of marketing?
I am a huge fan of video marketing, and I say that because I think it's a really great way to build rapport with people, and especially with people that maybe you've never met or don't get to meet one-on-one for a variety of reasons. But it's a really great way to just show your personality, right? It's one thing to hear someone, it's one thing to, read their words, but to actually see them speak and see their body language and how they conduct themselves and, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's awesome. And so I really enjoy making videos. I enjoy sharing videos. I know not everybody is comfortable with video, and that's fine, but I think it's a very easy medium to digest, right? I love watching videos, whether it's a movie or a podcast or a TED Talk, sorry, not a podcast, a movie or a blog, video blog or a TED Talk or whatever it is. I think video is a very easy way to digest information. And so I would say that's my favorite.
Awesome. And you're not just saying that because, of course, we're on video and this is a good video marketing tool, but
it works.
No, but yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think, you having, had a law firm and built that, just give some people examples. Like what would be like for us, we're talking about specific, things about how to, the business side of things, right? But for a lawyer, like what would you say to video market, like real estate practice or whatever,
Yeah. So first, pick your target audience, right? Like I was actually making videos in my practice geared towards real estate agents because I figured out a long time ago that I'm going to get a higher return on my investment by, getting these real estate agents to refer me people as opposed to having to find every individual buyer and seller to hire me. So my videos were geared toward real estate agents, and I would talk to them about things that were important to them as far as, what can delay a closing and, how do I handle my inspection issues and things like that. So find your target audience, whether it's the end consumer or referral sources or whoever you're trying to appeal to, and speak to them what's important to them. It had very little to do with what I was actually doing at a closing or what I was doing for my clients. It had everything to do with what's going to get the closing to happen fastest. What can the agent do to, not prevent a closing or to, get it to the closing table. So yeah, pick your practice area. Maybe it's estate planning. Then you're going to want to talk to, maybe you're talking to referral sources. Maybe you're talking to financial planners. What's the benefit of referring a client to an attorney like yourself? Or maybe you're talking to the end consumers, but figure out what's important to them and speak to those things in your video and just educate them. The more you educate them, the more they're going to see you as the expert. And when they have that particular problem, they're going to think of you top of mind. They're going to come and want the expert's help on that. So I think it's a fantastic way to, start getting your face out there and your reputation out there as well.
Yeah. And another example, I've seen like a family law, like in, mostly focused around, divorce. You see a lot of videos about, like here's what the divorce process is. Here's things to look out for. Here's like what mediation, the benefits or the cons, depending on somebody's angle on there, right?
Sure.
But I started seeing people now do things like, because again, thinking about what is the client worried or care about and that kind of stuff. And it may not be specific to the legal side. If you see people coming on and interviewing and talking to people about what it's like to co-parent and different, ways to talk to your children or living in different city, all these different things that come up that really, at the end of the day, once the documents are done and it's decided, they're going to, but like all these things live on and it's like there's a scared moment. It's if you're helping educate a little bit on something that they care about, even though it's not specific to you because you know your target, I think that those are the things I think that, really set people apart.
Yeah, I think it's a more holistic approach, right? Like I'm not just focused on what's the legal issue. Of course, that's going to be a huge focus. That's why I'm helping my client. But I recognize the fact that my client has other worries, other concerns that I can help with even just by educating. Like I don't have to be the expert on, a parenting plan or, the social and emotional effects on my children, right? I'm an attorney. I don't know that stuff necessarily. I'm not the expert. But if I have a great resource for them or I have a great referral for them, that's only going to help my client. And that's how you create raving fans that are going to refer you to the next person in need, right? So I think it's a fantastic way to start building up that community.
Awesome. Well, again, I've kept you too long, but I appreciate you sticking
pleasure.
around. I probably could go on and ask more and more, but I'll just tell people go listen to the podcast because we cover a lot of this stuff over there. But
please do. It's a fun
great.
one.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sticking with me, Melanie.
Thanks, Mark. Have a great afternoon.
Hey, what's up? I'm Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. If you feel like you learned something today, think of how beneficial it would be to chat with myself or another one of our marketing consultants one-on-one. Go ahead and visit our website to schedule your free consultation. It only takes a minute.